Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to NRRL's Monday Division. We are here for a one-shot qualifying, a sprint race, and a 50% feature race. My name is JP. I'm your commentator tonight. It is a pleasure to be here as always. And today our drivers take to the circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Canada for what is promising to be an incredible event today. This is round 3 of the season so far. We have been to 2 circuits so far, which, to be completely honest, I couldn't tell you what those circuits are. But it should promise to be a wonderful race tonight at the circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Great track for overtaking, wheel-to-wheel combat, and all that good stuff. So the drivers now ready up. Like I say, this is a one-shot qualifying as it is a sprint event. We have a 12-lap sprint followed by, I believe, a 37-lap race. And it makes for a lot of carnage, 2 races gives us a lot more action. But here we go then for I was going to say Q1, but this is just the one-shot quali. So here we are then into turn 1. Very easy to invalidate around Canada as well. So watch for those invalidations as people drop down the order. Michela is the man leading the way so far in the kick Sauber. This is equal cars, unlike some of the other tiers in NRRL. So doesn't matter, the people in the Saubers or whatever, but a 19.8 for Michela in Sector 1. He is currently the man to be watching on provisional pole position. A bit more difficult to commentate the one-shot qualifyings as we can only really focus on one driver, so we try and keep it towards the front, and that man is Michela. As he now comes towards the end of Sector 2, we've had 2 retirees in the form of CRBT and Anarchy, so they will start from the back of the grid for this session. Michela still leading the way and will ride on board with him through the DRS zone, down towards the final chicane. Again, very easy to invalidate through this final couple of corners. But the man currently on provisional pole position, we've got Dan Lovett in P2, and as he comes through now, keeps it tight and neat over the curbs, and that should be Michela on pole position, and that is exactly what it is. 2/10 clear of Dan Lovett. We've then got OWR in the V-Carb in P3 and Josh in 4th, and that is your qualifying then, ladies and gentlemen. And we now follow it up with a 12-lap sprint race. There are your timings then. Quite a few invalidations, quite a few disqualifications. Only 9 drivers actually setting valid lap times. And the quickest of them all, Michela in the kick Sauber, takes pole position. We've seen him being quick. He has had a massive turn of speed in recent weeks, and that exactly proves it. A 10th up on Dan Lovett. OWR in 3rd, Josh in 4th, and Arrays rounds off your top 5 with Kevin Baker in 6th. I Have No Grip in 7th, and another driver going by the name of OWR after him. I do now believe we have a little bit of a break between qualifying and the sprint race. I'm hoping we do anyway, because I'm now going to bring to you the drivers' standings and the constructors' standings. So as you can see, I Have No Grip currently leading the championship on 68 points, I believe that. No, 45 points, sorry, I can barely read. 45 points for him. We've then got Race Chase in 2nd place with Michela in 3rd, who won in Qatar, did not compete in Australia. And then if we look to the constructors, we can see Aston Martin with an early lead from McLaren, RB, Sauber and Haas. Obviously all very close. This is only round 3, like I mentioned, so definitely not anyone taking a real championship lead yet. However, we know that I Have No Grip currently leads the ways. Now, I would like to quickly plug the other days of the league. This is obviously NRRL. Today is Monday's sprint and feature race, equal performance at 8 p.m. All races are 8 p.m. UK time besides Sunday, which is at 7:15, as you can see on your screens. Wednesday, we have a short quali and 50% race. Exactly the same format on Thursdays. Then Fridays, we have the realistic 100% races. On Saturday, we have the F2 sprint and feature race. And then on Sundays, we are back to realistic performance for a short qualifying and 100% race. So those are your timings. I also would like to plug that Wednesday is the Super League. So if you're going to watch anything through NRRL, Super League is the one to be watching. I would also advise you watch this coming Sunday's race. We had the race yesterday. That was the penultimate race of the season. And going into the final race, the top 3 are separated by 7 points. Anybody in the top 3 can win the championship. It's going to be an incredible climax to what has been a wonderful season so far for our drivers. So if you are going to watch anything this week through the NRRL channel, please do make sure you are watching not only the Super League, but on Sunday. On Tuesdays, starting the 10th of September, we'll be racing as well, bringing you 7 days of racing action. So if you are new here, drop a follow. This is the only place where you can watch NRRL action. Drop a follow on the Twitch. You can follow us on TikTok as well for some more condensed highlights. And then if you are interested, we upload all of the streams to YouTube as well as some race highlight videos that will be posted a few days after the event concludes. So make sure you're following us on all social medias. I do believe there's an Instagram as well for other little posts. You can obviously see sometimes there might be provisional race results due to penalties or anything else. So if you are on social media, you will catch those updates. I'm pretty sure the championship standings are also posted on the likes of Instagram and TikTok. So any information regarding this league, and you will be able to see them on social media. But we now go back to the session as the cars line up, 5 lights ahead of the drivers, and it is lights out, and away we go. An even start between the top 2, but Dan Lovett does get into the lead. McKellar on the hards and Dan Lovett on the mediums, and Dan Lovett's mediums working very, very well for him off of the start, and he is into the lead of the Canadian Grand Prix. We will look at the tyres now. A big split in this sprint between mediums and hard compound tyres. Dan Lovett making the mediums work well. We've got Josh, who is up to 3rd. Kevin Baker up to 4th. CRBT, massive gainer through the first opening corners. As we look at the position gain now, BT up 4 places. Arrays, who was 3rd on the grid, I believe, down 7 places. So he has lost a lot. McKellar is still trying to come at Dan Lovett, but Dan Lovett is absolutely running away with this already. And we've got Kevin Baker jockeying for position behind. Josh is going to go down the inside on the McLaren and steal 3rd place from him. And now he is wheel to wheel with I Have No Grip, the current championship leader here on Mondays. And he is wheel to wheel with Kevin Baker and manages to get the move done. We've got contact at the back, and that is Bruno Fabian, who is round at the back. I don't believe there's any damage on that Williams car, but a 2.1 second lead for Dan Lovett on lap 1. He is sitting pretty here at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve tonight. And Josh has damage, but he has just managed to clear McKellar. But those hard tyres will come into effect later on in this sprint race. Josh needs to try and get up the road, especially with that damage, to try and limit the time loss, especially when those mediums start to die out. McKellar from pole position down to 3rd. He's got the current championship leader, I Have No Grip, right behind him. BT now up to 5th as Kevin Baker is dropping back positions all the time. Ben Clock is right behind BT and is looking to take that position away from him. BT up 6 places on the first lap. Incredible stuff from the Scuderia Ferrari driver. But out in front, Dan Lovett is only gaining away from the Alpine and the Sauber, who are still jockeying for position. Brilliant action in the opening 2 laps of this Canadian Grand Prix. Everybody absolutely going for it. Points obviously are available. Only half points during the sprint. The feature race is where the real points are made, but every point matters in a championship fight, and Josh has picked up a 3-second time penalty, meaning he will drop back come the checkered flag. McKellar, that will be music to his ears as they now come through turn 1 and negotiate that very nicely. Josh still struggling a little bit with the damage. That will wear his tyres as well, but the current championship leader, I Have No Grip, is really coming at McKellar. A lot of these drivers on mediums, McKellar is the only man in the top 7 to be on the hards, and he will be struggling with the grip. Still in the DRS of Josh, as Dan Lovett is really beginning to run away with this one. McKellar is right in behind as well. We've got I Have No Grip, who is really under pressure from the Scuderia Ferrari of BT here, and goes a little bit deep through there, and BT is going to have a look on the outside of the V-carb. They are wheel to wheel as we now enter the hairpin. Who is last of the late breakers? BT breaks later, but he's on the outside. Is he going to get the traction on the racing line? He is going to get exactly that, and BT moves himself up. into 4th position. I Have No Grip will have the DRS to try and come back at him, but so will BT, and Ben Clock is all over the back of this battle, waiting for any mishaps. But they are all negotiating it well as Josh goes very, very wide out of the final corner and loses the position to McKellar and loses the position to BT, who has just picked up a 3-second time penalty. But BT, a man on a mission in this sprint race. He did not qualify, but he's already up. It is lap 4 of 12 in this sprint race, and he is into the podium positions. Obviously, the caveat being that time penalty that he has picked up, a 3-second time penalty, but he is in the DRS of McKellar, who is on the hard tyres, and he is looking to promote himself up once more. 2.2 seconds, the gap out in the lead. BT is 9/10 behind McKellar, but will only be reeling himself closer with those medium tyres and with the DRS. I Have No Grip looking to gain back that position. Josh really starting to struggle with the damage on the front wing of that Alpine. You can see it understeering in the hairpin. He has not got the optimal grip. The front end of that Alpine not working perfectly with that damage, but he will be trying to come back at BT. BT is just under a second behind McKellar. McKellar driving brilliantly on those higher tyres to not lose many positions, but Dan Lovett is beginning to run away with this one. 2.4 seconds the gap as we enter lap 5, and the Haas car looking good here at the circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Behind, we've got Meldrum in the Alpine battling away with Arrays, who lost positions off of the start. He was the big loser through the start of the race, but he is now coming back at Meldrum, who is on the hard compound tyres. Paul Codd, 2.5 seconds off this battle. He's got Luco, who's right behind him, looking to gain positions. Kevin Baker in 11th, and then we've got Big Bruiser in 13th, Gavboy in 14th, and Anarchy has obviously had some form of contact somewhere. He's right down the back. No damage to the Aston Martin, so he will look to improve position. Same with Bueno Fabian, who was round at the hairpin on lap 1. And the gap now between McKellar and Dan Lovett really starting to come down. So was that a mistake from Dan Lovett, or are the hard tyres now performing well? BT is still well within the DRS of McKellar, so that would tell me that Dan Lovett somewhere has made a mistake, but this race is far from over. Lap 5 of 12 of this sprint race, and Dan Lovett may be struggling. He looks quick in a straight line, but now McKellar picks up a penalty, and BT picks up another one. So 6 seconds of penalties for BT, but he is not caring. He is going to look to the inside of McKellar towards turn 1 and now through turn 2. Sweeps around the outside. Little bit of contact between the Sauber and the Ferrari, but the Ferrari with the switchback. Great traction still on the medium tyres. Now into the next chicane. Very, very close to each other. Great racing from the pair of them to not make contact. Now insert Josh into the picture as he's right on the back of the Scuderia Ferrari, looking for any mishaps or contact between those, but he is really starting to struggle on those mediums. All the while, Dan Lovett just pulling out a little bit of a gap again on McKellar, but McKellar having the 3-second penalty behind, that will not trouble Dan Lovett. He is in a very good position if he can avoid picking up a penalty. BT with 6 seconds is going to struggle unless the other guys around him begin to get penalties as well. I Have No Grip has also picked up a penalty, and Ben Clock is all over the back of him and will ride on board with the Williams as here he comes now down the main straight. Doesn't even need the DRS to get past the V-carb, and he promotes himself up into 5th. We've got contact at the back there. I believe that was between OWR and Paul Codd, but there doesn't seem to be any damage to either of those cars. Or actually, yes, there is, sorry. Paul Codd carrying massive front wing damage, and you would assume coming into pit, but he is going to stay out. That is really going to harm the Ferrari driver's race. And while one of them is running in the podium positions, the other one down in 11th. Massive damage to that car, and Dan Lovett has made a massive mistake at the second chicane, gone very deep, and has lost position to not only McKellar, who now takes the lead, but CRBT as he's off the track again and onto the grass, and now loses position to Josh. So Dan Lovett, the long-time race leader, had a massive gap out in front, has now lost position. Here he goes on CRBT into the chicane, trying to gain back some of those places. BT well off the track there. I'm surprised that's not another penalty. Eventually loses the position to Dan Lovett, but the lucky thing for Dan is he does not have a penalty, whereas Josh and McKellar, who are currently running 1 and 2, do have those time penalties. BT still right on the back of Dan Lovett though, and will be looking to come back at the Haas driver. Ferrari engines in both of those cars. Which one has better straight line speed? We've seen Dan Lovett has been quite quick in a straight line, and that is exactly what he's doing to stay ahead of BT, but not for long, as here comes the Scuderia Ferrari down the inside towards turn 1 with the DRS. Nothing Dan can do to fight that, and he is relegated into 4th position. Medium tyres now maybe starting to wear off a little bit, and McKellar has a gap out in front, 1.3 seconds. We will look to the gap to leader, and as things stand, Dan needs another 5/10 to take the lead and win this Grand Prix. He is gaining time all the while though. McKellar obviously in clean air. Dan Lovett now behind BT, but will be getting that DRS. That will pull him along. BT is about 2 seconds behind that. Then we've got Josh, who's 1.6 behind McKellar, doing a beautiful job to nurse that Alpine that we know has front wing damage, doing very well to keep it in 2nd place on track. Ben Clock, we saw moments ago, managed to get past I Have No Grip. Like I mentioned, the current championship leader is the V-Carb, currently running down in 6th. BT and Josh fighting away now, and Dan Lovett is just falling off the back actually of BT, and he is really starting to lose time now to the leader, and that would mean that McKellar will take the sprint race win. Like I said in qualifying, he's had a brilliant turn of pace, has McKellar in the Kick Sauber in recent races, and he is only proving that today after taking pole position and now leading, and he is in a very good spot to try and take home the sprint race victory. Ben Clock also doing very well without penalties. We've got Paul Codd and Meldrum, who are both on double digits of penalties. Anarchy picks up a 3-second penalty. McKellar obviously has a penalty, and that's a big snap there for Dan Lovett, and that's only going to lose him more time. And there you go, 5.2 seconds, and ever growing between himself and the leader. Ben Clock now getting involved on the back of the Haas car. Dan Lovett really starting to struggle on those mediums, and the hard tyres now, you would imagine, will come into play. Paul Codd and Big Bruiser are fighting each other. Bueno Fabian on the back of that, but McKellar out in front, looking very well, is the Kick Sauber driver, about to cross the line to start lap 10 of 12. Dan Lovett, work to do if he wants to try and take that win again. He is still right behind BT, but BT all the time is losing time to Josh, which I must say is quite surprising with the damage that Josh is carrying and the pace of CRBT. We saw him skyrocket up the order early on, but Josh is racing very, very well here. He's in clean air, 1.4 seconds behind McKellar, and is racing for the win. We'll look at the difference in tyres again though. McKellar on the hards, and then the rest of the top 6 are on medium compound tyres. Dan Lovett in 4th is the big one. We've got contact again at the hairpin. Big Bruiser is round. I'm not sure if that was contact. There is damage on that Red Bull, and Bueno Fabian will be looking at that with impotence, trying to gain up the order into P15. But as we're now on lap 10 of 12, Dan Lovett once again is starting to gain on BT, who gets another penalty and spins. He manages to keep it out the wall, does BT, but he is backwards now, trying to get the car spun around in a safe manner. He is currently down to 9th and is going to have to let more cars go through. Tags the rear wing on the barrier there and is down to 11th. So BT, who was firing himself up the order, up into 3rd place, was looking good, potentially for a podium finish. Now down in 11th. Massive struggles for the Ferrari. That puts Dan Lovett in clean air now. Lap 11 of 12, the penultimate lap of this Canadian Grand Prix sprint. And Dan Lovett 4.8 seconds behind. He needs to gain about 1.8, 1.9 seconds, you'd imagine, to comfortably take the lead away from McKellar. But he's only got about a lap and a half to do it. So can the Haas driver try and pull something out of the bag on those medium tyres? Meldrum currently up in 4th, obviously carrying a lot of time. Penalties is Meldrum. There we go, 15 seconds for him. And there's Dan Lovett nearly spinning as well. And he's going to lose position to Meldrum. That's going to get very close between the Haas and the Alpine driver. And the Alpine is now on the inside as we go into the next chicane here. Dan Lovett manages to brake later. Big lock up there from Meldrum. And there's contact in behind. And Kevin Baker's round. I believe he touched there with I Have No Grip. and Kevin Baker is round. McKellar leading out in front. Dan Lovett lost a lot of time there. Meldrum still right behind him. But that really promotes McKellar as he is about to start the last lap of this sprint race here in Canada tonight. There we go, lap 12 of 12 now. And McKellar leading the way as Dan Lovett is round again at the final corner. Two late spinners, CRBT and Dan Lovett both went round. We saw Kevin Baker round as well after contact. But Dan Lovett, absolute heartbreak after leading for half of the sprint. He was in such a good position to win this race. Now finds himself down in 9th. He's the only man without a penalty. Will gain due to Meldrum's 18-second penalty as long as he doesn't have another spin. But for McKellar in the Sauber, he has driven it perfectly. He fell away off the start because of the choice to go on the hards, but that choice has paid off for the Sauber driver. He took an epic lap in qualifying to pole position, and he is going to convert that pole position to a sprint victory. I keep saying it, we've seen him have a massive turn of speed in recent weeks, and he is only going to prove to us more that he is a championship contender. 12 laps and a race to the flag here in Canada, and McKellar will be the first to meet it as he rounds the final corner now. The sprint race in Canada goes to McKellar. He wins the Canadian sprint race. It is Josh, after nursing damage for every single lap of the sprint, who manages to take second, and a big props to him. Incredible drive. It is an Alpine 2-3 on track, but that will no doubt fall away, and it's going to be I Have No Grip, our current championship leader, that finishes third. Ben Clock brings it home in fourth. Dan Lovett in fifth, carrying damage from that last lap spin. We then have OWR in 6th, Luco in 7th, The Rays in 8th, Kevin Baker in 9th, Meldrum drops down to 10th with his penalty, then Anarchy, Gavboy, Paul Cod and BT with no front wing now, BT, and a puncture. So I'm not sure what happened to BT right at the back, but he's got a left rear puncture and no front wing, so massive contact evidently made. He will inevitably drop behind Big Bruiser, and then Bueno Fabian will bring up the rear, and they are the results for your Canadian Grand Prix sprint. McKellar once again on the top step, and BT nurses the car home with that puncture and manages to bring it home in 15th place. We now have a little bit of a break, I believe, between the sprint and the feature race, and a bit of time to catch up on the action that we have just witnessed here tonight. Incredible stuff from all 16 drivers. Heartbreak for some, but overall incredible action between all 16 drivers. And there is your confirmation then. McKellar wins the Canadian Grand Prix sprint from Josh, I Have No Grip, Ben Clock and Dan Lovett brings up your top 5. OWR, Luco and Arrays are the last of the point scorers. Kevin Baker with that late spin after contact with I Have No Grip sees him tumble out of the points. Meldrum with his penalties finished third on track, tumbles out of the points as well. Anarchy in 11th, Gavboy in 12th, Paul Cod 13th, Big Bruiser 14th, BT 15th and Bueno Fabian in 16th. We now look towards the feature race then. 12 laps in the sprint race, and what a 12 laps it was. I do believe we have a one-shot qualifying now to determine the grid for the main race. Again, a bit hard to commentate on the one-shot qualifyings, but we will definitely be following McKellar as he was the man that took pole position for the sprint race. So we now load in to the one-shot qualifying. It's taking its due time, I must say. And we will quickly bring you over again to the drivers' standings. Now, obviously, with the sprint race, drivers did score points. We don't have those in the standings yet. And it would appear my game has crashed. Absolutely wonderful. So we'll load back in while we look at the standings. I Have No Grip, your current championship leader. We've got Race Chase, who is a reserve driver, managed to win out last time in Australia. McKellar currently sat third with Josh in fourth. As we look to the constructors' standings, Aston Martin currently lead from McLaren and Racing Bulls. Sauber in 4th, who will be gaining points with Michela today. A few drivers missing from tonight, but you can't guarantee that everyone will be able to turn up. And I'm sure that most people will be back next week. Just loading back onto the game now. I will message the guys and tell them that I am in need of another invite. And hopefully we get in before the sprint race concludes. Or not the sprint race, the one-shot qualifying concludes. We want to try and bring you all of the action that we possibly can. Apparently it's gone down for a lot of people, so it's going to be a lobby restart. Just had a message from Dan. Apparently everyone got kicked from the lobby, so not ideal, but you know, typical F1 servers. And we will just simply await the lobby getting restarted. I assume it's going to be a one-shot qualifying followed by the 50% race. And we will quickly look to the race days once again. So if you are new to NRRL, these are the days that we race on, including Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, Saturday, and Sunday. From the 10th of September, we will be bringing you action on Tuesdays as well. Mondays is a sprint and feature race. That is what you're watching today. We then have Wednesdays, equal performance, short qualifying, 50% race. Exactly the same format on Thursdays, followed by our Friday tier, which is 100% racing, realistic performance. We then go to Sundays for F2 action, and then on Sundays back to the realistic performance for another 100% race. Very close title fight on Sunday for the championship, the final race of the season. The top 3 covered by 7 points. So if you haven't watched anything from NRRL so far, make sure you are tuning in not only tonight but on Sunday, as it is going to be massive action all throughout as the drivers fight for the title. Last night we saw Alpine clinch the Constructors' Championship, and we look to see who will become our Drivers' Champion. Obviously very early to tell currently in our Mondays tier who is going to be World Champion, as we're only 2 rounds in. This is round 3, the Canadian Grand Prix. We'll go to Silverstone next week for the British Grand Prix, followed by the Hungarian Grand Prix at the Hungaroring a week after that. We then go to Monza or Imola, I'm not 100% sure. We then go to Brazil for the penultimate round, with the season concluding in Spain around the Circuit de Catalunya for the final race. 11 points currently in for the championship. Michela will have gained on I Have No Grip. I believe it's a 2-point gain, which would leave I Have No Grip with a 9-point lead. Michela could take the lead of the championship tonight if he is able to replicate what he did in the sprint race. I'm going to quickly message the owner, because that's telling me that we've got another sprint race coming, which is obviously, we've already had the sprint race, so I doubt we'll be having another one. And we will just make sure that that gets sorted. I'm not sure if it will. We might have to do no, there we go, all sorted. So there we are then, a 35 lap race will be coming up for you, ladies and gentlemen. We are all just loading up into the lobby now. We will await everybody getting in, and then we will bring you the action once more. On screen are your standings. On the left is the previous race results, and on the right are your Constructors' Championship standings. I must say, I do like the graphic design for this league. You can see the championship and the race results all in one graphic. You can see that I Have No Grip, whilst leading the championship, yet to win a race, which is very interesting. Michela won in Qatar. That was the first race of the season. Did not partake in Australia, but now back at Canada to try and mount a title charge here in the Monday sprint and feature tier. And like I mentioned, tonight being Canada, next week we go to Silverstone. for the British Grand Prix. Always a great track, Silverstone, and it's the same here in Montreal around the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve, and we saw it in the sprint. Incredible action all throughout. Tussles for the lead, heartbreak for some, joy for others, as everyone jostling for position, and we have another 35 laps of that coming your way tonight. We are just loading in now. We have 14 drivers in, just waiting for a few more, and then we will be able to get going. One-shot qualifying followed by the 35 lap race for you here tonight. And like I say, we will be on board with McKellar for the one-shot qualifying. The man that took pole position in the sprint race, looking to do the double, managed to convert his pole to a win in the sprint race. Will he be able to do the same in the feature? That is where the big points are scored, and he will be looking to take as many as he can in his pursuit of a first world championship. As we know, I have no grip, currently leading the championship. We'll bring you back to the lobby screen so you guys can see what's going on. We're just waiting for one more driver, I believe, and then we will be getting going. And I would like to again plug the social medias. So this is the only place that you can watch NRRL live, the Twitch channel, NRRL Race Day. If you are new, please do consider dropping a follow down below if you're enjoying the action, if you're enjoying the commentary, if you're just enjoying the racing that we bring you soon to be 7 days a week. Do drop a follow down below. You can find us on YouTube and TikTok for more condensed race highlight videos and just anything NRRL really, especially on TikTok. Very, very active on TikTok. So if you are interested, do drop a follow over there, as well as subscribing on YouTube. And I believe you can find us on Instagram as well. I will be making us a little link tree thing. So hopefully from tomorrow, that will be in the bio of the Twitch. And I'll try and get a little bot set up so it sends it to the chat before every race, so you guys can find us as easy as possible. As we now already up then, ready for one-shot qualifying. An exciting feature race awaits us here at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Just waiting for a few more to ready up, and we will be ready to go. Ready for one-shot qualifying action here tonight in Canada. Here we are then, loading in. We'll just wait for the drivers to get their setups on, get their fuel done, get their tyres ready, and then we will be flying away for our one-shot qualifying once again. Looks like we're ready then. We are readying up. A 30-second wait before qualifying starts. Everyone just getting their setups on, maybe tweaking the front wings, the ride height, the suspension, and then we will be in. McKellar was the man that took pole for the sprint race. Will we see the same from the Sauber driver for the qualifying for the feature race? Here we go then, ladies and gentlemen, and on board with Michela to start the lap into the first chicane. Very easy to invalidate. You want to take as much curb as you can, then get it turned in nicely. Slowly step on the power. Now go flat out towards the second chicane. Again, very easy to invalidate and cut over the curb. Michela negotiates it very nicely. Now through this little kink, right-hander into yet another chicane. Very difficult to negotiate this one without having some form of wheel spin. But again, Michela going very well. Now towards the fourth chicane of the track. Again, very easy to bump over the curbs, lose a lot of time. Michela swinging it in absolutely beautifully. And now towards the hairpin you go. Pick your braking point, stand on the brake pedal, get it turned in nicely, meet the apex. Michela just a little bit wide there. Get on the power as quick as you can. Deploy your ERS. And towards the final chicane you go. Josh is currently the man setting the pace as the DRS is enabled for the drivers. To the final chicane. Pick your braking point. Pick your turn-in point. Get it over the sausage curbs. Put the power down. And Michela is going to see pole position once again. It's a 110.8. 4 tenths clear. And I believe we had a few disqualifications there for the likes of Josh and Dan Lovett, who was setting the pace at the start. BT must have had a spin somewhere, and he's going to start from 9th. But Michela once again setting the pace in qualifying, and this time going even further clearer than he did in the sprint. 4 tenths clear of Ben Clock. You've then got Luco in 3rd. Gavboy and Kevin make it a McLaren 4-5. I Have No Grip in 6th, with Paul Codd 7th. Big Bruiser 8th. Anarchy 9th. BT will start from 10th. Meldrum in 11th. Arrays, Josh, Dan Lovett and OWR not setting lap times, and they will start from the back. But an impressive lap from Michela, and with I Have No Grip only starting in 6th, he is very poised for an incredible race result here and could potentially take the championship lead. Obviously, this is only round 3. I keep mentioning it, but every point matters in F1 league racing. As a man that's done it for 8 years, I can tell you for a fact that every chance you get to score any little point, you need to take it, because it can come down right to the wire and 1 point can flip it or lose you it. We'll now have a little bit of a break between the qualifying and the race. Michela lining up on pole. A few new faces that I've not seen in these races tonight, which is always good to see. If you are interested in joining the league yourself, please do contact either BT or Dan Lovett on Discord. They are the main people that deal with the recruitment. You can also find us on TikTok and message us on there if you are looking to join the action and get involved. Always space for new drivers and always space for the community to grow, and we would love to join you on track. We now await those fabled 5 red lights ahead of the Canadian Grand Prix. 35 laps forthcoming. And it is promised to be an incredible race all throughout. We saw the action in the sprint. That is only going to be doubled in the race. Appreciate you, BT, mate. Cheers for tuning in. Always good to see you in the chat. Best of luck for the race, my friend. I'm sure you don't need it after that charge you made in the sprint. Incredible stuff from you, my friend. as we casually await those 5 red lights. Tyre deg is awful. Good information, to be fair. I did think McKellar would be better poised on the hard compound tyres, but I didn't realise the mediums would fall away so quickly. As here we go then, the 5 red lights ahead of the Canadian Grand Prix. And it's lights out, and away we go. A pretty even start between the top 2, but McKellar is going to lead into turn 1. OWR is going to be second. I think there was a bit of carbon fibre there flying around from one of the cars at the back. We've got a Ferrari moving very slowly, and even more carbon fibre now flying around as we've got a Mercedes at the back with damage. But McKellar, with the dream start, leads through turn 1 and sets the purple first sector. Ben Clock and Luco Gavboy, the top 7 actually, all holding positions, but there's big contact there between the Ferrari and the Alpine, and they are nearly 4 abreast here. Dan Lovett looking to go down the inside of Josh. Is he able to make that move stick? He's not, and he's round. He manages to get it pointed in a good direction, but then BT makes contact with OWR, and he's nearly in a wall. Massive chaos on this opening lap, and there's more contact there between Josh and Anarchy. Everyone going into the side of each other. They are all pushing hard on the opening lap. BT manages to get past Dan Lovett, but they are wheel to wheel, and Dan Lovett with sublime straight line speed manages to get through. We've then got Meldrum who pulls ahead of OWR. We've got Gavboy who is retired, and I believe there is a safety car deployed. Arrays gets a 10-second penalty for speeding in the pit lane, but the race is now neutralised. A virtual safety car, I believe, rather than a full safety car. McKellar leads from Ben Clock and Luco. Kevin Baker, I have no grip, and Paul Codd up 1 place. Josh up 6 places. Meldrum up 3. OWR up 6. Dan Lovett up 4. And then BT, Bruiser, Anarchy and Arrays all losing positions. Arrays into the pits to change his front wing, but we go racing once again, and DRS is enabled, and Kevin Baker is very, very close to the back of the Aston Martin. Aston currently leading the Constructors' Championships, one of them in 3rd, Anarchy in 13th after having to pit. And here we go then between Josh and Paul Codd. Down the inside goes the Alpine into the hairpin. Lovely executed move there from Josh. He moves himself up into 6th place, and now begins the charge on our championship leader. McKellar 1.6 clear in the lead from Ben Clock. Luco gaining on the Williams all the time with the DRS and looking to try and promote himself up into 2nd place. Is there going to be enough of a gap into turn 1? He's certainly going to go for it, is Luco. Not enough of a gap though, and he has to stay behind for the time being. Kevin Baker watching this with impotence as I have no grip, and Josh still battling away. Big Bruiser sets the fastest lap of the race, and we've got a yellow flag at turn 1. I believe that was for Meldrum, who may have been round. We've got Big Bruiser right on the back of him after just setting the fastest lap of the race. Dan Lovett in a bit of a world of his own here, but BT is on the back of him looking to try and improve up the order. Currently sat in 9th is the Ferrari driver. Josh up 8 places so far, looking to make that one better. He's gaining on this train of Ben Clock, Luco and Baker, and is now within the DRS and will be joining the party in looking to gain some positions. Josh up 8 places in the first 3 laps. Incredible stuff from the Alpine driver. As we look to the tyres, Kevin Baker is on the hards and is very well poised to try and make a move on Luco, but Luco pulls out and goes past Ben Clock. They say that the best defence is attack, and that is exactly what the Aston Martin driver is doing, and moves up into 2nd place. And Ben Clock is going to lose another position here as Kevin Baker goes down the inside into turn 1 and turns his 4th place into 3rd. Ben Clock losing 2 positions in 2 corners there. Luco, the big gainer, up to 2nd, but McKellar is really running away with this. 2.5 seconds in the lead is the Sauber driver. Josh now really on the back of this fight and looking to compound the issues of Ben Clock. I have no grip on the hard tyres, pulling away from Dan Lovett. Paul Codd managed to get past his teammate Beatty. But here we go between the two Ferraris. No team orders down at Maranello. And Beatty is going to look to get past his teammate. Nothing doing for Beatty until that chicane, but he will have a great chance with the DRS. Paul Codd just about not in that DRS to Dan Lovett. So this should be a relatively easy move for the sister Ferrari. CR Beatty looking to get past on Paul Codd as we now go to the straight. Very long straight this, and look how quick Beatty is gaining straight past his Ferrari teammate and up into 8th place. Kevin Baker has managed to dispatch the Ferrari of Luco and up into 2nd place. So the hard tyres working well for the McLaren driver. Equal performance for these cars, and Kevin is using the McLaren like it works in real life. Josh is now making the move on Luco, and he's up into 3rd place. Ben Clock down to 5th, and Josh, I have to check how many places he's up. 10 places from the start, and we are only on lap 5 of 35. His Alpine working incredibly well, and he is looking to push on as we see Ben Clock and Luco now going wheel to wheel into the next chicane. Who's going to be last of the late breakers? They're still wheel to wheel, and off the track goes Luco, and he does have to give up that position inevitably. I Have No Grip is now joining the party in this fight, and Kevin Baker starting to pull a little bit away from Josh. Josh is going to have to use some of that battery down this straight to try and get back within the DRS, and that is exactly what's happening. That gap ever tumbling between the Alpine and the McLaren. Double DRS zone this though, so he won't get it down the main straight as we enter lap 6 now. But Kevin Baker is really starting to gain on Michela. We know the difference in tyres. It's hards versus mediums, and whether Michela made a mistake or Kevin really does just have pace tonight. We've seen Kevin in many races before, but he has struggled a bit with pace, but he is flying tonight and is all the time gaining on Michela. So Michela, who had it very sweet out in front for a long time, is now maybe beginning to struggle, and the McLaren of Kevin Baker is reeling him in. 1.2 seconds currently the gap, as we've got a yellow flag there, and it is Arrays who is now out of the session, and we have a safety car deployed. So I believe Arrays was in the Wall of Champions, the final corner. But that is not where you would want to be if you are the Mercedes. And the safety car is deployed then. And the race now slows down. And that will be music to Michela's ears, who was losing time all the time to Kevin Baker. Josh will be very happy to have the race neutralised so he can calm down a bit after an incredible opening 6 laps. Kevin Baker gaining on Michela, but Michela is coming into the pits, as is Kevin Baker, as is Josh. Ben Clock also into the pits, Luco into the pits, I Have No Grip into the pits, Dan Lovett, Beatty, Paul Codd is the only man to stay out. Meldrum also stays out, so Paul Codd will effectively take the lead of this Grand Prix. However, he's not pitting. We've got then Meldrum, who will come out in second. Big Bruiser coming into the pits. Anarchy stays out. And then we've got OWR, who I'd imagine will not pit after pitting very early on. So Paul Codd leads then from Meldrum. Michela emerges in 3rd. Kevin Baker in 4th. Josh in 5th. And has gone on to the medium tyres, which is quite interesting. I would have thought the hards would have been the play to try and take those to the end of the Grand Prix. Ben Clock, who was running 2nd, lost a lot of positions. He's currently down in 6th, which is technically a net P4. Luco in 7th with Dan in 8th. Anarchy 9th. BT in 10th, who has really been struggling this weekend. We've got I Have No Grip in 11th on medium tyres as well. And I must say, I find that quite interesting, the choice to go onto the mediums. My personal choice would have most certainly been the hard compound tyres to try and take them to the end of the Grand Prix. Paul Codd and Meldrum will inevitably have to pit again, but honestly, I would see Michela getting past them before any pit stops are involved. Great camera angle here of the cars all going around the hairpin. Dan Lovett in 8th. He's also been struggling this weekend, along with BT. I Have No Grip has been racing quite consistently, as has Josh. Michela, we know Michela's quick. We know he's going to be towards the sharp end of the grid. and I believe he won round 1, looking to become the first repeat winner in the Monday's division. Kevin Baker going for a maiden Grand Prix victory. Josh also looking for a maiden victory. Same with Ben Clock and Luco. All of these drivers jostling for positions, but the safety car slowing everything down for the time being. You would imagine it will be in this lap as Big Bruiser will catch up and we will return to racing conditions once again. Lap 8 of 35 here in Canada. Behind the safety car we are after a raise, unfortunately for the Silver Arrow driver, found himself in the Wall of Champions and out of the Grand Prix. Paul Codd will initiate the safety car restart. From memory, I can't remember Paul Codd ever negotiating a safety car restart before, so it'll be interesting to see where he decides to go, whether Meldrum will be able to try and catch him napping and take an early lead. McKellar will be looking to try and gain those positions as quickly as possible and put some cars in between himself and Kevin Baker, as Kevin with a massive turn of speed towards the end of that stint, as the safety car is in this lap then. So the safety car will speed away. The Scuderia Ferrari of Paul Codd will inevitably become the de facto safety car. A little bit of mind games going on there between Josh and Ben Clock, I believe, but all of them are through completely fine. Paul Codd just weaving to try and get some last minute temperature into those hard compound tyres. Same with McKellar and Josh in behind. All of the drivers weaving around to try and get some temperature, but I believe Paul Codd has gone very early and he really has caught Meldrum by surprise, and McKellar is very far back from the pair of them. So a great restart there from Paul Codd. I was questioning his experience there, but Meldrum has gone straight into the back of him at turn 1. Luckily no damage done for the Alpine driver, but that will bring McKellar more into play. He really did not have a good safety car restart. Kevin Baker all over the back of the Sauber, and Josh will be looking to push on those medium compound tyres. Anarchy picks up a 3-second time penalty. Kevin really close to the rear wing of that Sauber. No DRS on this lap, and McKellar is looking to make that dividends and try and get past Meldrum, but Meldrum very, very quick, I must say, in a straight line, but massive lock up there, as also we see McKellar going wide. Josh manages to get through on Kevin Baker, which will be music to McKellar's ears, but McKellar is now under threat from Josh on the mediums. Paul Codd and Meldrum locking up massively, and that is going to allow McKellar through into second place and Josh into third. The two Alpines wheel to wheel down the straight now, but Josh is the real gainer and is coming at McKellar for the net race lead. Towards the inside of the chicane he goes, able to brake much later on the fresher grip, and that's Paul Codd into the Wall of Champions and out of the Grand Prix, and we have yet another safety car deployed there. The race leader, Paul Codd, just a little bit deep into the final chicane, and he is out of the race. And Josh, that will be music to his ears, taking the lead just before that happened, managed to stay out the way of the Ferrari into the wall. It is only a virtual safety car, so it just neutralises the race, but Josh taking the lead. Incredibly effective move from the Alpine driver. Swings himself into the lead of the Grand Prix. McKellar in second with Meldrum in third. Kevin Baker in fourth, and that will be music to McKellar's ears as he tries to put some cars between himself and Kevin, as we've got a couple of cars with drive-through penalties for speeding under the virtual safety car. But McKellar has got a great jump on Josh, and he is very, very close to the back of the Alpine into the hairpin. Nothing doing into the hairpin, but down the main straight is really where he's going to have his chance with the DRS. We now look at the Sauber attacking hard on the Alpine. They've got no threat behind. Meldrum is under pressure from the McLaren of Kevin Baker, but here comes McKellar towards the final chicane. Is he able to put any moves on the Alpine? Not yet, but a great exit out of the final corner, and the Sauber really is gaining. Kevin Baker picks up a 3-second penalty, but Josh, just with a little bit more battery, manages to fend off the Sauber and maintain his lead. Meldrum going very deep off the track, and that's going to allow Kevin Baker through and into third place. Meldrum in fourth with Ben Clock right behind him. Luco is right behind him. And then Dan Lovett in the fight with CRBT. Anarchy just a bit off them, and I Have No Grip currently in 10th. OWR struggling for grip on the mediums. Big Bruiser right at the back. And we will now check the penalties then. So 6 seconds for Kevin and Meldrum, Dan Lovett and BT. 3 seconds for Anarchy and OWR. And then a drive-through penalty for Big Bruiser for speeding under the virtual safety car. Kevin Baker, 2.6 seconds off the battle for the lead. And here we go again then, reminiscent of a lap ago. McKellar coming at Josh. Very, very close between the two drivers. But again, Josh with more battery is going to be able to maintain that lead into the final chicane. What of the main straight? A massive slingshot McKellar got the last lap. He doesn't get it this lap, and Josh inevitably will maintain that lead as Meldrum now comes into the pit lane. That will promote Ben Clock up to 4th, BT up to 5th, Dan Lovett to 6th, Luco to 7th. And those drivers all jostling for position. 3.6 seconds now. The gap between Kevin and McKellar. Kevin really in no man's land here. 2 second gap behind to Ben Clock. 3.5 second gap ahead to McKellar, who has just picked up a 3 second time penalty, and that will be huge for this Grand Prix if Josh can manage to stay penalty free. Those tyres will die out quickly. We heard from BT in the Twitch chat that the tyre degradation is abysmal around the circuit Gilles Villeneuve tonight, so Josh will begin to struggle relatively quickly. The question is, will McKellar and the likes of McKellar, Kevin, Ben, BT, Dan Lovett, will they be able to take those tyres to the end? Because you would have to assume that Josh will need to pit again. Will McKellar have to pit again, or will Josh have to try and execute a major undercut on the Alpine driver and bring himself through? McKellar again trying to make the move on Josh. Nothing doing for him. He's not able to get through, but he is a lot closer. Kevin Baker all the while losing time. BT, Dan Lovett and Ben having their battle. BT manages to get up to 4th. He is carrying damage on that Ferrari front wing. Dan Lovett will be looking at that with impotence, trying to get through on the Scuderia. Ben Clock on the back of that. I believe Ben, does he have damage? He does not. Luco is also carrying damage. Does Luco has quite big damage actually. No end plates at all on that Aston Martin, so no wonder he's losing time to his teammate. The current championship leaders, Aston Martin, struggling here tonight at the circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Exactly the same battery though for McKellar and for Josh, and that could be crucial going down this main straight. Josh still harvesting. McKellar deploying everything he has. He didn't get a great exit though out of the final corner, and Josh is still deploying. McKellar with the DRS though, and we are on board with the Sauber towards the final chicane. Is he going to get that slingshot he got a few laps ago? He is not, and Josh somehow managing to maintain that lead again. Brilliant work from the Alpine driver to hold off the Kick Sauber. Kevin Baker still losing time to this, and here we go then with Dan Lovett and BT. BT manages to brake a lot later. Dan Lovett driving quite conservatively, and BT stark defence from the Ferrari driver, managing to hold on to 4th place for the time being. Ben Clock right on the back of this to see if there are any mishaps or contact that he can try and capitalise on. Dan Lovett with a lot more battery than BT, and that will be helping him in his pursuit of the Ferrari driver. DRS enabled, and he is going to go through. CRBT lets him through. I would imagine trying to get the jump on him out of the chicane. Somehow that didn't give BT damage there. I was convinced that would have given him more damage going into the wall like that, but somehow it didn't, luckily for the Ferrari driver. And we are on board with him now as he tries to gain back that position on Dan Lovett. These two always jockeying with each other, BT and Dan. And here we go then with the Scuderia Ferrari. Ferrari power in both of those cars. He goes to the outside. He gets squeezed into the wall there. Luckily, no damage for the Ferrari driver, and he manages to make his way through, but picks up a time penalty. Now over to you, Ben Clock, who's going down the inside of the Haas. Into turn 1. Dan manages to brake later this time than he did in his battle a lap ago with BT. Is he able to keep the move done. No, he's not. Ben Clock sweeping around the outside. Lovely move from the Williams driver to move himself up into 5th. Beatty managing to hold on to 4th place. And all the while, McKellar and Josh still going at it for the lead of this Grand Prix. 20 laps left. Lap 15 of 35. Incredible stuff between these three. BT, Ben and Dan all jockeying for position here. As we now look to the second chicane, they're almost 3 abreast, and they are 3 abreast. Now going into the hairpin. This is going to be very, very dicey here. BT decides to back out of it. He'll choose to live another day. Dan Lovett promotes himself up to 4th, and BT is actually losing position here. And there's massive contact, and BT's into the wall. No front wing for the Ferrari. No doubt he will have to come into the pits after that. Contact with the Ferrari, not the Ferrari, the Aston Martin, sorry, of Anarchy, who promotes himself into 5th ahead of Ben. Josh and McKellar wheel-to-wheel through turn 1, but BT into the pits. Heartbreak for the Tifosi and the Ferrari driver. But the battle between Dan, Anarchy and Ben, and even Luco, we knew it was getting feisty. Well, there you go then. That is what happens around the Canadian Grand Prix circuit, the circuit Gilles Villeneuve, when you are not careful. And BT into the wall. But here we have McKellar coming at Josh for the lead. The tyres may be starting to die out for the Alpine driver, and McKellar does take the lead of the Canadian Grand Prix on lap 16. 6-second penalty for McKellar will be aiding Josh's fight, but is it maybe time now to come into the pits, get on a set of the hard tyres, and begin your fight back to the front for the Alpine driver? No damage for either of them, completely level pegging apart from the tyres, but McKellar is looking quick on the hards. Josh is going to have a little look down the inside, try and put some pressure on him into the final chicane, but nothing doing. And Josh's tyres are starting to struggle. Now, if I'm in the cockpit of that Alpine, I'm thinking, now I've lost a position, it's time to get the hard tyres on and begin my charge to the front once more. Kevin Baker, 5.2 seconds behind. Dan Lovett, Anarchy and Ben Clock then are in 4th, 5th and 6th. BT emerges in 10th with Luco right behind him. Not ideal for the Ferrari driver. After that contact at the hairpin, Dan Lovett in 4th, looking to try and gain on Kevin Baker, but an 8-second gap is really going to compound those issues for the Haas driver. Anarchy managing well as Ben Clock, who are all in this fight for 4th place. Josh is starting to lose, though, a little bit of time to McKellar, and I do just wonder if it's time for him to come into the pit lane and strap on a set of the hard tyres. Luco picks up a 3-second time penalty for those extended track limit warnings. That is going to hurt his race. All drivers with a penalty except Josh and Ben. Here comes the Alpine, though, towards the final chicane. He just needs about 100 metres more, but he picks up a 3-second penalty through the final chicane. That makes it a bit more level. He's still got 3 seconds less than McKellar, but that does make it a little bit more equal as we start to reach half race distance now. McKellar in the lead. The hard tyres working well against the mediums on the Alpine. Surely not taking those tyres to the end is Josh. The tyre degradation just too much there. Kevin Baker running really a race on his own, but it would be, I believe, a maiden podium. A maiden podium, sorry, for Kevin Baker. And he will most certainly be happy with that after a great qualifying performance. We'll look now to the position change. Up 2 places is Kevin, our big gainers. Up 11 places is Josh, potentially up 12 if he can find his way to the win. Dan Lovett up 10. So the Haas evidently working well as well. OWR up 6 positions from the start. He's doing well in the RB. And McKellar, we know, started on pole position, currently leading the race. He is making it work. Moving on then to lap 19, and Josh does come into the pits. I thought it would be the right time to make the call. Evidently, he's listening to me. I'm the chief Alpine strategist today. Onto the hard tyres goes the Alpine. Good stop from the Alpine crew, and he emerges back out on track. You would assume he will come out in 5th place with Anarchy making a pit stop as well, and that is exactly where Josh will come out in 5th, just ahead of his teammate Meldrum, and he now has the work to do. We'll look at the gap to the leader. He is 17 seconds behind, but he will be on the better tyres. McKellar will have the fresh air. Josh will have a few cars to get past, first of those being Ben Clock, and he is right behind the Williams driver. Fresh rubber for the Alpine. Ben has been on those tyres for 12 laps now, same as the rest of the top 4, and Josh will look to clear him as quickly as possible and get on the back of Dan Lovett. 16 laps to go in this Grand Prix, and Josh has those 16 laps to try and bring down that gap. 16.6 seconds is the current gap to the leader. You can't imagine that McKellar will box again, so he's going to have to make this work on track. First move on Ben Clock completed successfully. That is exactly what he wanted. Very nice and clean with the DRS through the main straight, and he manages to get the move done. Next target, Dan Lovett. We'll look at the interval again. 3.5 seconds he needs to gain on Dan to cruise up to the back of that Haas. But it is one thing to gain on a car. It is another thing to overtake a car. Will Dan Lovett put up a fight against the Alpine driver? I wouldn't imagine so, because that isn't his fight today. But you never know. He might try and hold on to claim that final podium place. McKellar is currently leading from Kevin Baker. 7.4 seconds, the gap between them. It's reducing a little bit, but then it goes up again. It's staying quite stable, is the gap between McKellar and Kevin. So McKellar with nothing to worry about. He's just got to keep knocking down the laps. And already, over half a lap, Josh has gained a second on Dan Lovett. So Josh, mighty quick on those tyres. The only issue with a strategy like this is he's going to need to be quick on the hards to try and gain up to McKellar, but he's going to need enough of the tyre grip left to be able to get there. And Kevin Baker is now in the wall, and that throws it all up in smoke. Dan Lovett manages to come into the pits, but that somewhat screws it for Josh, because McKellar will be able to come in for a fresh set of tyres. Dan Lovett into the pits, as is Ben Clock, and Kevin Baker chasing a maiden podium here tonight in Mondays on NRRL. And unfortunately for the McLaren, making a mistake. It must have been driver error. There was nothing wrong with those tyres, and the McLaren makes it a double McLaren DNF. He's into the wall. Heartbreak for McLaren. Papaya hands will be covering papaya faces tonight. Both McLarens are out, but this is really heartbreaking for Josh. Looking for the undercut. Would have made this race incredibly interesting. McKellar is going to get a free pit stop and will emerge in the lead of the Grand Prix. Now the question is, what tyres does McKellar put on? The mediums, it's going to be difficult to get them to the end. He definitely could, but they will die out quite quickly. He's spent 14 laps on those hards so far. What will he choose? He does come into the pits, does the Sauber. What tyres are going on? We've got Luco, who is now out of the session for Aston Martin, the current Constructors' Championship leaders. What tyres are going on to that Sauber? It is hards. So Josh will have slightly older rubber, but McKellar does have more penalties, I believe. If we look to the penalties now, yes, McKellar has 6 seconds, Josh has 3 seconds. And interestingly enough, actually, Josh does come out in the lead. So with that pit stop for McKellar, he is demoted to second. And crucially, barring that Josh doesn't get another penalty, McKellar will have to overtake the Alpine and then gain 3 seconds on him. And the tyre delta is not that much between them. We will quickly run you through the penalties. So it is 3 seconds for I Have No Grip and Josh. 6 seconds for McKellar, Dan Lovett and Big Bruiser and Anarchy. 9 seconds for OWR and CRBT. 12 seconds for Meldrum. And then Ben Clock, the only man without a time penalty so far in this Grand Prix. Lap 22 of 35. We are under the safety car after Kevin Baker crashed heavily at the Wall of Champions. Unfortunate for the Papaya fans and for Kevin Baker chasing a maiden podium. He will have to wait at least a week longer for that illustrious feeling. Josh looking for a maiden win. BT is currently taking the last podium place. He has been fighting with Dan Lovett all throughout this weekend. And this is going to be an incredible climax to this Canadian Grand Prix. So all the drivers start to line up behind the safety car now. We just wait for OWR, Meldrum and Bruiser to catch up. You would imagine it will be in within a lap or two. And we can now take a little bit of a break and try and catch up on what we've seen. It's been a great race so far between these 15 drivers. And it is only going to get better as we get closer to the end and the drivers realise what is possible and where they are going to finish. You would imagine they will be the last stops for all of the drivers, barring any damage or anything like that. If we look to the stops now, everyone is on a 2-stop, apart from OWR, who is 3-stopping. Josh currently up 12 places. McKellar down 1 from pole position. CRBT is up 7. Dan Lovett up 10. We've got Ben Clock, who is down 5. OWR is up 7. Chaotic race it has been for the drivers so far, but Josh is rising to the top. McKellar will have a job to do if he still wants to win this Grand Prix. Better tyres for the Sauber driver, 3 laps difference in them. But you can't imagine that will make too much of a difference. And McKellar, with the extra 3-second time penalty that he will serve at the end of the Grand Prix, you would imagine that strikes confidence into Josh. Safety car should stay out for another lap just to let Bruiser catch up. He is currently coming towards the hairpin and the safety car will stay out for another lap. So we will get going on lap 24 into lap 25, which will leave us with 10 racing laps for these drivers to try and get through. We'll now look to the fastest lap. That goes to BT. Josh is about a 10th off that. McKellar not really showing great fastest lap pace. He has been very consistent though. Same with Dan Lovett and I Have No Grip. They are all being very consistent so far. We've got a yellow flag. Is that someone in the pits? That's OWR in the pits for soft compound tyres. That's quite interesting, I must admit. Didn't expect to see anyone on the softs in this race, especially with BT's comment saying that the tyre deg is very, very high. I must say I'm surprised to see anyone trust the softs, but OWR will have some great pace in the opening laps of the safety car to try and regain those positions he's lost via pitting. You would imagine the safety car will be in this lap then, and Josh will lead us away going on to lap 25. 10 racing laps for these drivers, jockeying for position to try and take the glory. Into the hairpin we go now then, and the safety car is in this lap and Josh will slow them right down. Here we go again. What do you have in the locker, Josh? When does he go? We know that it's easy to be caught napping under a safety car restart, and that is exactly what he will try and do to McKellar. BT will look to try and gain some positions here as well, as will Dan Lovett. Those two have been squabbling all night, and Josh is just slowly speeding up. He's still weaving. He hasn't gone yet, has Josh. He's just getting some temperature into those tyres through the final couple of corners. He goes now then, and he has gone out of the final corner, and he has got a good run on McKellar. McKellar is with him, but not close enough to make a move into turn 1. BT is in 3rd. Dan Lovett in 4th. I Have No Grip in 5th. Anarchy 6th. Ben Clock 7th. No change between the drivers under the safety car restart. But now we can really get racing, and BT has made a massive mistake, and that's going to allow Dan Lovett through into the final podium place. Big mistake there from BT. Not enough traction on the exit in that Ferrari, and he drops down to 4th. The Ferrari-powered Haas into 3rd. McKellar all the time trying to compound some pressure onto Josh, force him into a mistake. 6 seconds of penalties though for McKellar. Josh only with 3 seconds, and this battle is going to heat up quickly towards the chicane, towards a hairpin, we go. And McKellar is going to look to the inside of the Alpine. They are wheel to wheel, and on lap 25, they are really jostling now. No DRS for the first lap under the safety car, so he is going to have to do it himself, is McKellar, if he looks to make this move. But he has used all of his battery in that attack, while Josh has not, trying to defend. Both cars not with any damage. Towards turn 1 we go now. DRS is enabled, but Josh manages to hold on to the lead. Now the crucial thing for Josh is he can lose the lead here. He just cannot get another penalty. 9 laps to go here in this Canadian Grand Prix. Josh is looking good out front. It's then an 8/10 gap from McKellar to Dan Lovett. Another second separates Dan and CR. BT Anarchy is right on the back of BT. I Have No Grip and Ben Clock involved in that battle. Meldrum is also on the back of that. But out in front, McKellar does now have the DRS on Josh, but he is not close enough to try and make a move into that chicane. And towards the hairpin we go again. 1 lap ago, McKellar decided to throw it down the inside. It didn't completely work for him. He's not going to be close enough to make a move on this occasion. He just needs a good exit to try and put the power down. But the Alpine working very well under traction, and he is not going to be close enough, is McKellar. But he is draining that battery all the way down this straight to try and get as close as he can. Into the final chicane we go then to begin lap 27. The Alpine working well, but a great exit from McKellar is going to see him be very close to the Alpine. To turn 1 we go. Is he going to elect to go down the inside? He has a little sniff of it. Not late enough on the brakes to really give him a challenge, but he now looks for the switchback on the exit of turn 1. Good traction though for the Alpine, and he manages to stay in the lead. Great defense from Josh. Good attack and driving from McKellar. And this is really starting to heat up now. Josh's battery slowly starting to deplete here. And Dan Lovett is right on the back of this fight. He's really reeling himself into the position. And this would be an overtake for position between Dan Lovett and McKellar, because they both have 6 seconds of penalties. Anarchy moves up into 4th past BT. Good move from the Aston Martin driver. BT looking to regain that. But here we go again with McKellar and Josh. Lap 27 of 35 here. And McKellar is looking to make it work. Dan Lovett is also draining the battery, trying to get as close as he can. But here we go with McKellar. Is he going to be close enough into the final chicane to try and make a move? No, he's not. But a good exit out of here will really line him up for a move. And that is exactly what he's got. Towards turn 1 we go again. Josh doesn't have any battery. To the inside goes the Sauber. Is there enough of a gap to try and swoop it around the outside? There isn't. But he is going to try it anyway. Better traction though for the Alpine on the hard compound tyres. Great defensive driving from Josh. And he manages to stay in the lead. Dan Lovett is just looking behind this, waiting for any incident to try and collect himself a race victory and a maiden victory in this division. But the battling is really starting to fire up now between McKellar and Josh. He's using a lot of battery. Josh is really struggling now for battery. He does not have much left, and McKellar is saving all the while. And that is only going to help him down this main straight once more. Dan Lovett is also gaining in. He has got a hell of a lot of battery to try and deploy down this main straight, and he could easily find himself towards the top. OWR on the soft compound tyres struggling. He's had a spin towards the back then. No damage done for the V-Carb driver, but McKellar is very, very close, as is Dan Lovett. Very late on the brakes was the Haas driver. McKellar and Dan both pick up time penalties, and the pendulum really swings in Josh's favour. But here comes McKellar again to the outside of turn 1. They are much closer than they have been on previous occasions. McKellar just about takes the lead. There is contact between them. But on lap 29, the Sauber of McKellar moves into the lead of the Canadian Grand Prix. 9 seconds of penalties for McKellar though. Only 3 for Josh. Josh is still sitting good to take the win here in Canada tonight. Dan Lovett is in 3rd. 9 seconds of penalties for him as well. He will want to try and attack McKellar for track position, but he will be taking a podium anyway, and I'm sure Dan Lovett will be happy with a podium finish. Josh will most certainly be delighted with a race victory here tonight, as long as he can avoid any incidents and stay within 6 seconds of Michela. Michela really needs to try and run away with this now, but I fear there isn't enough time for him to be able to do that. Deploying the battery is Josh on board with the Alpine, and he is gaining all the while with DRS. Is he going to be close enough into the final chicane? He's not. And we've seen Michela very, very quick. But again, he picks up another penalty, does Michela. Now on 12 seconds. And now Dan Lovett's in position for second. Here comes Josh again down into turn 1. And Josh does take the lead back. The Alpine line goes to Michela. The Alpine forces him wide. But now Josh does snatch the lead again away from Michela and keeps the position. Michela really starting to struggle now with the track limits and the traction. And Dan Lovett is now on for second place. Michela, who took pole position, won the sprint, took pole position again for the main feature race, is starting to struggle, but he's now back on the inside of the Alpine and is looking to take the lead. Beatty goes very, very far off the track, gets a massive penalty for corner cutting and loses many, many positions. I think he's lost about 3 or 4 places. Down into 8th is the Ferrari. Michela now leads the Canadian Grand Prix. Beatty picks up another penalty again, and they are all jostling for position here. This is the battle for 5th place, and they are nearly 4 abreast going into the hairpin there, and Beatty has gone into the back of the Ferrari, and that is big damage again for Beatty, who has been in the wars all race long, the Ferrari driver, and still, even only with 4 laps to go, he is still struggling in that Ferrari. Even more damage for the Scuderia driver, and the Tifosi will have their head in their hands, and they're probably already walking home. They will not want to be watching this. Dan Lovett right on the back of Josh. Michela manages to maintain his lead for the time being, but 12 seconds of penalties is the real issue for the Sauber driver here as we enter the closing stages of this Grand Prix. We look to the tyres. 12-lap-old hards for Josh, 9-lap-old hards for Michela, 10-lap-old hards for Dan Lovett. These are your top 3. These are the podium sitters, but it is all undecided who will stand on what step. There is always still more time for drama. Michela, though, is starting to pull away and is 1.1 seconds clear now of Josh. As we head into the hairpin, Josh will not have DRS, so will Dan try and be able to mount an attack on the Alpine driver, who is looking best placed at the minute for the Grand Prix win. He is just about getting within the DRS of Michela again. Had a lot more battery than the Sauber driver, who obviously used his battery to try and get out of the DRS gap. But Josh is straight back into it. Dan Lovett just sitting back, biding his time. He knows he doesn't really have to do anything. And again, Michela picks up another penalty. 15 seconds now for the Sauber. And this would most certainly drop him off of the podium. I Have No Grip might inherit a podium here. And the lead 2 in the Drivers' Championship, Michela and I Have No Grip. Michela might be throwing this away as we look at the gap to the leader. Michela, with his current penalties, would drop down to 7th. And we've still got 3 racing laps left of this Grand Prix. So it's not over yet. But Michela is really going to lose position, struggling to stay within the white lines and on the track limits. Josh, most certainly, barring any incident, is going to inherit a podium here. But Michela is going to drop off of the podium, barring any more penalties. I Have No Grip will inherit that and further his championship lead. Josh is going to take a maiden race victory, and here he goes with Michela. He doesn't want to win it via penalties. He wants to win this on track, and that is exactly what he's doing, as Beatty again is off the track now and has 44 seconds of penalties, does the Ferrari driver. So he will most certainly be finishing last in this Grand Prix. I don't know, he did pit, for soft tyres, so you would imagine he will take the fastest lap of the race. But Josh, he does not want to win this through penalties. He wants to win this on track, and that is exactly what he is doing. Michela really struggling, and Beatty has been disqualified from the session due to too many penalties as he got another 3-second penalty. Michela on 15 seconds. OWR on 18, Meldrum on 24 seconds of penalties, and Dan Lovett maybe just starting to fall off the pack of the leaders at the minute, 1.1 seconds behind. He has so much battery, and I would say, if I had to give a bit of constructive criticism to Dan, he always has so much battery, he does not use it enough. He needs to start using this battery if he wants to try and go for a victory. McKellar in second. Josh currently in the lead. McKellar isn't going to be able to make a move. Meldrum moves himself up to fourth on track, but with those penalties, that will not stand as we roll on to the penultimate lap of this Grand Prix. Josh leads from McKellar, Dan Lovett, I Have No Grip, Meldrum, Ben Clock, Anarchy Bruiser, and OWR. Josh with a little bit of a tighter line there through turn one. That is going to help him with traction on the older hard tyres, and they are starting to pull away now from Dan Lovett, who needs to start using his battery if he wants to get back within the DRS. He will gain that second place due to the penalties, but he cannot afford to lose any more time. McKellar is beginning to gain on Josh once again with the DRS. If he's going to go for a move, it's got to be now. All he can do now is win this on track. McKellar is almost guaranteed to not win this race unless something absolutely major happens here. Josh leads from McKellar as we now go down this main straight for the second to final time. Dan Lovett is slowly closing that gap, but it is not quick enough. Josh is too far ahead of McKellar. He's not going to be able to go for the move into the final chicane, but we've seen how good McKellar's exits are out of the final corner, slingshotting his way through the chicane, and down the main straight they go now as we enter the final lap of this Canadian Grand Prix. OWR picks up a 3-second penalty, but can we please have a round of applause for Josh, our current leader? Look at that, 12 positions gained from the Alpine driver. Again, massive props to Dan Lovett as well, who will also gain 12 positions with McKellar's penalty. You could not pick a driver of the day tonight. This has been absolutely incredible from the Alpine and the Haas drivers, but they have driven absolutely extraordinarily, and Josh is a very deserving winner who is going to come home for his first race victory on Mondays. He is always in the mixes, Josh. In any tier that you find him, he is always up towards the front. He has not managed to win a race thus far, and as much as McKellar may be about to beat him on track, Josh is going to take home the race victory. He's always towards the sharp end in every tier that he is in, and he can finally call himself a Formula One race winner. As he comes through the final chicane now, he will win it on track. He will win it overall. Alpine on top once again. Josh wins the Canadian Grand Prix. It is Dan Lovett that will finish in second for Haas. McKellar will provisionally finish third, but I do believe that I Have No Grip will take that third place due to penalties as he comes across the line now. No, he doesn't. So McKellar does manage to stay on the podium and will move into the championship lead. He is a very, very lucky boy here tonight. Ben Clock finishes fifth. Big Bruiser in sixth, with Anarchy, who will replace him in sixth with those penalties. OWR will finish in eighth. And that is your order then. An incredible drive from Josh to take victory here at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Dan Lovett also gaining double digits to see himself in second place. Great driving from the top two, battling all throughout, and a very deserved winner in Josh here tonight. Congratulations to the Alpine driver. Congratulations to Dan and to McKellar for becoming our championship leader. And there are your stats then. Josh wins the Canadian Grand Prix. The fastest lap goes to Anarchy. Driver of the day goes to Josh. Most overtakes goes to Josh. And the cleanest driver is Ben Clock. There you are then. Josh wins from Dan Lovett and McKellar. I Have No Grip in fourth. Ben Clock in fifth. Anarchy in sixth. And what a race it was. Big Bruiser in seventh. OWR in eighth. Luco ninth. DNFing, Kevin Baker, Paul Codd, Erase, Gavboy Meldrum and Beatty all fail to reach the flag. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in tonight. My name has been JP. I have been your commentator. It is always a pleasure. We will be back on Wednesday for the inaugural round of the Super League. Do not miss it. Drop a follow down below if you are new, and we will see you on Wednesday for the beginning of the Super League. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.